Hey everyone, thank you very much for joining me today. Now, I've got something a little bit different planned for you all this evening. Hopefully, you guys will all enjoy it just as much as I have. Now, recently, I had a new artist, certainly new to me, that got in touch. Something slightly different, very, very different indeed. So, I had Toronto is Broken get in touch through one of the live streams, and as a result of that, we featured them on the channel a couple of times. And I was very lucky to get a little preview of the album, which does drop on the 29th. So, literally, the day after this goes out, this will be available everywhere. It's absolutely amazing. Lots of different influences in there to what you'd normally expect to be seeing on the channel. But I think there's going to be quite a lot of you which are going to dig this. But I did get to have a little bit of a sit down with the mastermind behind Toronto is Broken. So please take a seat, grab yourselves a brew, and I hope you enjoy the interview. And I'll just let this crack on. Okay, guys, so as promised, today I have got an interview with Mr. Christian Hoffman from Toronto is Broken. Thank you for joining us today, buddy.
You're right, Kev. Thanks for having me.
No, I massively appreciate you getting in touch as you did. It was as I've told you previously, it was quite a ballsy move.
Yeah.
And it's not the sort of music that people would generally think someone that's into their metal would be. But I'm not really your average metalhead. I'm not one of these that's like Slayer, you know. I like it.
I'm not a fan of Slayer either. So.
I don't mind them, but you know, it's like if one song comes on, I'm like, right, yeah, okay. But if someone was like, let's listen to the whole album, I'd be like, no, just two. No, I'm not that massively into them. But basically, for those not aware, so the way that Christian got in touch was we were doing a live stream, and then he literally dropped in and said the music. He told me about the music that he does, and he's like, would we be interested in doing it? Now, at this point, we had an absolute ton of requests in, and I just basically said to everyone in the chat, I was like, is everyone fine if we just drop this in? And everyone was cool with it, as they usually are, man. Great community. They're really kind when it comes to things like that.
Yeah, some good people in there from when I've hung out myself. So
yeah, it was fun, man. And then we went straight into it, and I was like, right, this is cool. And like a normal sort of progressive metalcore kind of track, when it comes to the breakdown, I'm just expecting, you know, it's just going to be nice and filthy. And then when you did the breakdown that you did, totally not what I was expecting. Yeah. But like, it was just amazing, man. That like Paragon is just absolutely sick, man. I love it.
Cheers, man.
I absolutely love it. And I love how you've placed it in the album. I really appreciate you getting that over to me so I could check that out pre-release. It was so annoying, man, because I was listening through it and I was just like, I just want to share this with everybody, but I can't. But yeah, man, give it a full listen. Absolutely amazing. Anyone that wants to check these guys out, this is their album Clare. You probably can't see it quite well because of the camera focus that I have. But it basically drops on the 29th of this month, and let me just tell you, it's amazing. The one thing I'd recommend when you give this a listen, go in with a very, very open mind. If you like your metalcore, if you like your gent, if you're a fan of bands like Sleep Token, but then you also like what bands like Enter Shikari, Pendulum, stuff like that did, then you're absolutely going to love it.
Yeah.
I mean, when I just look through my comments, I made quite a few comments written down on this when I was going through it track by track, and moments that are the little comments that are coming up: ambient undertones, filthy, goosebumps, beautifully euphoric. Even in I remember in track 5, Reminisce. Is that what you'd call like a kind of junglist type vocal?
Yeah. It's the jungle kind of Natty Campbell, who's the vocalist. He's from a jungle act called Chopstick Dubplate that are good friends of mine, and they're a jungle act, and that's the kind of I wanted to. That one is kind of like the vocals actually taken from an old kind of reggae tune that's been sampled quite a few times vocal wise in jungle, because people that know their jungle and stuff, they know it's all very sample heavy and there's a lot of kind of things that get reused. And that was a vocal that I'd loved for ages, and he came along and revoiced it, gave it like fresh lyrics and stuff like that. And so there's kind of a jungle flavor with the old kind of, with the newer kind of metal-y drum and bass kind of thing that I do. So
I mean, with that one, my literal notes for it after because I was like, junglist type vocal, is it? Because obviously I'm not 100% like familiar with this sort of thing. Friend of mine, Neil, used to play guitar for a band called Passengers. He loves everything from like gent to this type of thing. He'll always send me something and be like, just check out how filthy this sounds. And then if it wasn't for him, I probably wouldn't have been quite as into it as I am. But I mean, I literally just put, ooh, when the bass drops in, because when that kicked in, man, I was like, oh my God.
Yeah.
And I found with that was the perfect ground because it satisfied my need for the heavy, but in a completely different way.
Yeah.
And I like that. And with all the different elements that you use in the music which you're creating, I'd imagine it's not quite so easy to be able, because
No.
there's a lot of dominant sounds in there which want to be up, but you manage to mix it like perfectly. Like the one thing that I'm quite interested in, like, because obviously you can hear the metal influence in there. Like I think it was in Gunfingers where that really started to come through. That was where I really, because it sort of
Like the
starts
second half of the album, it kind of gets ramped up.
Yeah, and I like how you did that, like, because I know with this sort of thing, you know, each track sort of leads into the next. Whereas like a metal album's not really, that's not really the case. They're all sort of separate, completely separate songs. They don't necessarily have to sort of connect together. But what was it that sort of led you to doing this rather than just being? I mean, I know I say average, but you know, this sort of stuff isn't average. But
Just
how
a
did
typical
you?
drum and bass producer.
Yeah, what
Basically.
sort of led you into wanting to do that?
So I've been around as Torontoisbroken, releasing since 2012. So I've been around releasing on labels for nearly 10 years, making music for longer. And so like on Spotify, for example, on my discography playlist, there's like 120 tracks and stuff like that. And I think it's funny that it's taken me this long to kind of find my sound, essentially. But originally, if we go right back to the start, my background is in like metal and like emo and metalcore and stuff like that. I like grew up like with My Chemical Romance's Three Cheers and like the first Panic at the Disco album and like Atreyu and Kill Switch and stuff like that.
Yeah,
and,
man.
my all-time favorite band, what is still to this day, is Enter Shikari, because it's funny you mentioned them a few moments ago. And up until I listened to them, my impression of just not just dance music but electronic music in general was just like, I was just thinking like Scooter and Cascada, like high-pitched vocals and bleeps and stuff. I was like, nah, this ain't for me. Then I discovered Enter Shikari, their first album, and they kind of their whole big spiel, their big thing was blurring all these kinds of like incorporating like all these electronic elements and trance elements into, I suppose, like post-hardcore was their kind of style back then. Especially tracks like Mothership and things like that, where it's basically just one chord throughout the whole track.
I just love it. I remember when I first heard that, and I was just like, probably shouldn't like this, but I really do.
My favorite track off that album is Return to Energizer, just how it changes throughout the chorus, the big Faithless style Insomnia Faithless style bit in the middle. And then it's through them I kind of discovered kind of electronic music, and I was writing music at the time, just like guitar-based music. I wanted to be in bands, but nobody would have me, or the kinds of bands that I'd be in would just be playing like covers of Sweet Child of Mine and Don't Look Back in Anger, and I was like, for God's sake. Like,
not really.
I hate those two songs.
I'd imagine that really wasn't really satisfying your like creativity.
Yeah, so I was writing stuff, and then from Enter Shikari, I kind of realized I don't need to be in a band to make music. So I went down the electronic route. I discovered drum and bass not long afterwards, and anybody that comes from like a drum and bass is a fan of drum and bass and stuff like that. They'll know, they probably agree with me with this, is when you discover drum and bass is just the only thing that matters. So I kind of lost touch with metal and stuff like that for however many years, making like metal, making drum and bass and dubstep and breakbeat and jungle and stuff like that. And then I started to kind of rediscover metal a few years ago when writing my second album. So like I kind of stumbled across Architects, and it was their Left Together, Lost Together album, tracks like Naysayer and Gravedigger on and stuff like that. Bangers. And started to delve a bit deeper into it. And like the first thing that struck me was like how low are they? How low have they tuned their guitars? Like, and then discovered bands like North Lane and Tesseract and Thornhill, Time Evaluator, this year Spirit Box, obviously. And if you notice in the credits and the shout outs, there's actually a little shout out to Mike and Courtney from Spirit Box in there.
I didn't actually spot that. One thing I did spot that I thought was really, really cool. I think it's behind the CD where you say, was it something like, was it to your, I want to make, let me make
my daughter.
Sure. Yeah, man, you were like, just to my daughter. Here's something cool that your dad did during lockdown.
Yeah, there's so I've got all 3 albums here. So this was the first one, Section 9, and so this is 2015. In there, there's a little, you probably won't see it, but it says 4 Pops. Her name's Poppy. She's 8 now, but when this came out, she was 3? 4 Pops. This is proof that your dad was cool once. The second one, Dear Pops, he has even more proof that I'm well cool with Dad. And then I obviously had to do it for the third one as well. I can't remember word for what. This is how cool your dad was during the global pandemic of 2020. So just little messages for her. She doesn't like the music I make, but she'll appreciate it when she's a bit older, which I thought was a cool touch. But yeah, so I like discovered Spirit Box. I joined. They're the only patron I've subscribed to, and I'm like under tier 4, the highest tier, and they have these small little, like once a month, these little band workshop things where there's literally only like 10 of us that join this live stream. We send our music in, have a listen, and I did a similar thing to what you did, where I just out of the blue, I think the track I sent them was Always in Motion, because that's the one I was working on at the time. They both absolutely loved it, Courtney in particular, and and they said similar things to what you've said to me and stuff like that, and then from that, obviously the Holy Roller remix came about and stuff like that, so they're well aware. I kind of got blessing from Mike to put that out, which is a guitarist and stuff like that, and that seems to be going really well. A lot of people liking that, and that's a heavy kind of crossover. Like,
that was amazing. That was absolutely amazing. Like, even before I'd put it on the channel, I think I'd recorded it, and then I sent it to my friend Amy, who's like, she's also done a Spirit Box cover, and she loves them. And I was like, check this out, and I was like, and yes, it is going on the channel. But when I saw that, I was like, he must have like got permission from them for doing this, because otherwise I'd imagine it'd have been put out there and then probably like blocked
and shut down straight away.
Yeah, like that must be amazing, dude, to like, you know, have someone like yourself who obviously you've been in the industry for quite a number of years.
But I've been in a different ecosystem is kind of how I'm saying.
Yeah, and then you know, have people like Spirit Box who are quite happy for you to, you know, do that with their music, because I'm sure some people would have the mindset of, oh, basically, so he's just basically taken their song and put some extra little bits in. But if you actually listen carefully to it, I did say this in the feature I did for it, where you've not done that. There's lots of elements in there are brought up, like the drum and bass, if I'm right, is a lot higher up in the mix. And you kind of made some of the guitars that was, it's like slightly fuzzier or something.
I think I just reamped the guitars. I had to clean the eyes for the guitars, and I just ran them through my general processing. But one thing I learned writing this album, Paragons in particular, was kind of the first track of this new style, and basically I had to. So I'd say I'm a fairly competent producer when it comes to like drum and bass and stuff like that and electronic music, but mixing down metal is a challenge in itself. Like I basically had to relearn how to produce and engineer and mix down music, and not at the same time, I also needed to make those elements stand up with the highly electronic and synthetic elements of the drum and bass sections. Of the, you call it a breakdown, but in obviously in my drum and bass world, that's the drop. That's the main high energy section of the track. That's when all the sub bass and everything comes through. And like for the more kind of, I'm sure there's going to be plenty of people that record and stuff themselves that are watching this. Like for technicalities, like metal and drum and bass are very similar because they're both high energy and both based on rhythm and momentum, as opposed to kind of compositional techniques. But the thing is, like drum and bass and and metal are both have this kind of whole wall of sound kind of feel to it. But if you actually compare the two together side by side, drum and bass, the frequency range it covers is so much greater. It covers the whole frequency range, right to the very tops to the very lows, to the subs. And that that's because it's designed to be listened to in a nightclub, on a big club system or a big festival stage. Whilst metal, the recordings that they do are not going to be replayed in the club because the band's going to perform them live. Whilst for me, I DJ as my main performance. So I'm essentially, for lack of a better term, hitting play, but like, but on 4 tracks at the same time, basically. That's what I'm doing. And so I had to do lots of tricks. Like, for example, like the frequency range is so much narrower. They don't have the very highs and they don't have the very lows for metal. And those drums, they don't have the kind of weight and power of like the electronic kick and snare that I'm using. So I had to do lots of tricks like layer in white noise and boost them up with additional samples and stuff like that. Even stuff like the guitars. So 90% of a guitar sound is from the cabinet it comes out of, and the speaker, but that narrowly restricts the frequency range of it, which if you put that up against a synth, just sounds dull in comparison, but the tone is there. So I had to do stuff where I had to layer in like an uncapped, pure distorted signal with it to bring back those tops. But if you ever listen to a guitar distortion without it running through a cab, it's just ear splitting and horrible, like basically. So I had to do lots of tricks to like kind of get them to sit together and things like that, and layer in sub bass. And yeah, that was the biggest challenge when I wrote Paragons. Once I'd wrote Paragons, I was like, all right, this is kind of like, so to speak, like a format or blueprint to kind of follow with other tracks like Gunfingers and Freefall and stuff like that.
Loved Gunfingers.
And yeah, it's just about also another things like the composition of it, the arrangement. Drum and bass follows a very strict arrangement. There's an intro, build up, drop, breakdown, and then second drop. And it's that second drop where the DJ would mix in the next tune and there'd be overlapping and you fade out the previous one and stuff like that. Obviously, the structure with metal, there doesn't most of the time follows the traditional pop structure, doesn't it? Verse, chorus, and stuff like that. Unless you're some kind of, I don't know, technical neckbeard or something like that. It was just all over the place with like 10-minute long tracks and things. But like, it's designed like that for a certain reason, because essentially this music is a tool for a DJ to use. And I could have, like, merging rock and rock elements in guitars with drum and bass is nothing new. Like you said, Pendulum have done it for years. There's been acts like the Chemists, more recently, guys like Muzz that have done it. And all that stuff is amazing. It's brilliant. And there needs to definitely be more of it. But I would kind of say it's drum and bass with guitars on it. Yeah, as opposed to this was more with those tracks. Like there are on the album, there are a few tracks like that. Like, for example, Reminisce and like The Moment. All the tracks, apart from Between Planes, have guitars on it, but a lot of the but sometimes they're just to reinforce. Sometimes it's a full metal section, like on Gunfingers and Paragons. And it was trying to work out how to get the track so it is 50-50 metal, 50-50 drum bass. So you got the full metal sections and the drum bass sections, and doing the back and forth between them, and it's still being one piece of music. So that was quite a challenge to work out the structure of how to get that to work. It wasn't as easy as just turning on the guitar and jamming some stuff. And I did another interview recently with UKF. That'll be an article later in February. And like one of the biggest things as well was when you're producing electronic music, there's a lot of just messing around with synths and sound design and you playing stuff on a keyboard and editing it later with a piano roll. Obviously, you can get like guitar synths and stuff like that. So synthesized guitars and guitar samples, but I still wanted it to be real and I still wanted it to be played. However, I needed to actually practice what I had written before I could record it. And that's something that like most people you wouldn't have to deal with when you make a drum and bass, because you just program it in and you can just change the notes later and whatever. But this, I actually had to all right, I wrote a riff, but now I actually need to practice it for however many days before I actually record it. Right. So you have to be quite committed going into writing it. But like on the flip side, this whole kind of style, writing this album just came so easily, so naturally. Like, it's my third album and it's the quickest by far to write. The whole thing comes so naturally. And like I say to some people, I feel like with this album, I've found my sound, my identity, my niche. But it's only taken me 9 years or so. But like, I got there eventually, and yeah, it's just so many things that I wasn't anticipating, and it is a lot of it's a lot of commitment and work to put in, going into it to kind of be this kind of concise and quite dedicated to it, I suppose. So you
We
can't just
absolutely
merge the
killed
two.
it.
There's a lot of footwork that might put a lot of people off, having to relearn how to make music again, essentially, to practicing what's going to be on the track and stuff like that. And yeah, there's other little nuances as well that I come across as well. But yeah.
Well, you did absolutely amazing. And what you said, like, you know, how it's taken you that long to get to find like what your sound is. Like, see, for me, obviously, from first hearing Paragons to then hearing the Spirit Box remix to then hearing the full album, like to me, essentially, that's like, oh, this is obviously it's new, but
Yeah.
it's not really in terms of putting out music. It's not really new territory for you because you've been doing this for quite some time.
Yeah.
But just off when I listened to it, I was like, this is somebody who absolutely knows what they're doing. And from listening to it as well, like the mix and the master on it is just absolutely perfect. It'll be interesting to see how it sounds on, because you'll probably know what it's like, especially when you have distribution in place, regardless of whether you personally upload it to YouTube. It just appears in the topic channel anyway. That just happens. It'll be interesting to see how that's going to sound on YouTube. That's what really my one bugbear with YouTube. I absolutely hate when you listen to something on Spotify. Yeah, you go over and it's like, why have you fucking ruined it? It was nice.
Yeah.
But no, man, it was just absolutely crazy how good it is. And I love how, like you said, like, you know, you've got like the first half, which I would say is probably more drum and bass with a few little elements. I mean, I'd say from like track one, We Are, like literally hearing the first song, I literally messaged my friend. I was like, dude, you're just going to absolutely love this. He will love it.
Yeah, that one, because that one, well, whenever clubs reopen, will be my intro track on my sets for however many long. So I had to, it actually was kind of made from what used to be I made a little intro for my sets anyway, with the big kind of build up and the big siren sound that comes in. Basically, that's how I used to start my sets anyway. I'd made a little intro and then I used that and developed it into a full track. And one thing as well, like I was thinking about this, like, because obviously I've not played. Last gig I played was last February in the Netherlands.
Wow.
And so literally like 2 weeks before the world shut down. So I was quite lucky to get that one in. And like, I was thinking, like, if clubs were still open, I probably wouldn't have written this album, because what people from metal might not know, from the metal like world, is that when you're writing music as a DJ, you'll often test it out to a live crowd during a DJ set for quite some time before you actually release it.
Yeah.
Obviously with a metal band, you're not gonna see them live. They're not gonna play unreleased material because people won't know it. And they probably haven't honed in the practice yet or the writing. But there's a big thing. This is this whole kind of like, it's called a dub culture, where people will play a lot of unreleased music and to test it out on a crowd and stuff like that. And obviously I was just a very conventional dance floor drum and bass producer before this. And if I played something like Paragons in a set to test it out, people probably would have been like, what's he doing? What is this? Like, and they're like, girls coming up to me like, can you play some proper music, please? And stuff like that.
I'd be like, what?
Yeah, it's like, can you play some danceable music, please? And then, and obviously that'll be like, all right, this isn't really working out. It'd be quite disheartening. But because I've been able to do this and release it straight away, now when it goes back to playing, if I didn't play any of that music, people would be like, why didn't he play any of their heavy stuff? Because now they're expecting it from me. And I had to be quite tactful with the singles. So Paragons is the 5th single. And with each single, I had to basically wean the audience into this change of sound. So the first single was Between Planes, which is a very typical kind of dance floor drum and bass track of my kind of style. So that it doesn't have any guitar or metal elements in it. And it's the only track on the album that's like that. And so that came out, and then Reminisce was the next one, which is still a pretty straightforward drum and bass track, but it's just got guitars and it's more that pendulum style. And then there was Always in Motion, then Gunfingers and Paragons. And with each track, that metal influence became more and more apparent right up until Gunfingers. And then obviously then the Spirit Box remix that came out last week. So I did have to be quite tactful. Like if I went straight in with Paragons, people were like, what the hell's this? So I had to kind of like warm up my audience so that now people expect that from me as an artist going forward and seeing me live. So
you see, you didn't really need to. There was no sort of like warm up required with me, because that was a
no,
sound
of course not. No.
I'm already familiar with that sort of sound, and for me, it's always about finding something that's that little bit different. There's you'll know yourself. There's God knows how many like thrash bands, metalcore bands, and a lot of them all sound very, very similar. But every now and again, you'll come across something very unique, like Time the Valuator, for instance.
Yeah.
And I kind of felt like when I heard this, and certainly when I listened through this full album, I was like, this is something really, really special, and it's something which I don't think every person that's into metal is going to like, but I think a lot of people that have got a similar taste to myself are quite open to trying lots of different sort of things within the metal and alternative genre. I think they will dig it, and I think it's going to do really, really well. I mean, have you found generally, because I'd imagine you've probably had quite a bit of feedback since you've been dropping things, but it'll be different because for me, putting it out to the people that watch my content, it's more a case of, oh well, he's got the metal elements as well as the drum and bass. Whereas when you're putting it out to your followers, you're suddenly giving them this new element, which I'm sure there'll be people in there that aren't really familiar with the. I mean, there's people that probably don't even know that bleh is a thing. But how's that been?
Yeah, no. So obviously, metal's not going to appeal to everyone, but I feel like I haven't really had any negative feedback from listeners or anything like that about it. They all seem to be on board. If anything, it's as intended. It's just opened up my audience quite a bit.
I think it's going to be really good.
It was actually quite funny that whilst I was working on Paragons, I uploaded just like a clip of it for just general feedback to like a drum and bass production group on Facebook. And just because I was like, oh, what do you guys think of this? It was just a short, like minute long, and I was like, what do you think of the transition between the two styles? And everyone seemed to be loving it. And but there was one guy, and his comment was like, this is why we shouldn't let Americans have drum and bass. I was like, firstly, there's two things, like let's unpick that. Firstly, I'm from the UK, but I understand where you think I'm maybe not from the UK with the name like I've got. Easy mistake to make. That's fine. Okay. Secondly, Toronto is in Canada, not America. Yeah. And then, once to clear that out, his comments quickly disappeared. But no, everyone seems to be loving it and really on board. And I think like a lot of people in drum and bass, I think, their original roots are in like rock and stuff like that, and I think they find that appeal of like the heavier style of drum and bass thanks to their background of like enjoying rock and metal and stuff like that. So
well, I do find sorry, go on.
My first introduction to drum and bass was like Pendulum and the Chemists that did this rock kind of crossover style with drum and bass. So, and obviously they were pretty big and mainstream, Pendulum, and they made a comeback last year as well. First time in like 10 years, and and that their track they released won like best drum and bass, best track at the Drum and Bass Arena Awards, which are basically like the Oscars for drum and bass and stuff like that. So they're still top of their game and stuff like that. And I think that you find, like I said, you find a lot of people, their love for music originally roots in like rock and metal and stuff like that. So
that's definitely true in terms of like how fans can like cross over, because I've found in a lot of my time, I used to, when we could actually still go out and pubs and clubs were open, I'd find that I'd go out with a bunch of friends and I might end up in a club, and there might be like, I mean, there was ages back we used to have this night around here which is called the Bass Race. I think they've played up and down. I think they've done that event up and down the country. I'm not sure.
Okay.
That's not normally my cup of tea whatsoever. But I was like, you know what? Let's go along. And I absolutely love it. But it's always weird with me. You can always tell. It's quite easy to tell who the metalhead is because you know you've got all the people in the crowd who are like doing all this, and there'll be a bit come in and
fingers.
Yeah, and I remember a friend of mine said it's hilarious if you see Kev at drum and bass night because he's the only person that I've seen that air guitars to it. it just comes out, man. It fucking comes out, and I can't control it. But no, I really enjoyed it.
Be interesting to see now once they, because obviously the big trend in drum and bass right now is what's known as the foghorn bass. So it's a very minimal track, and the bass is just a big, basically static foghorn noise, and it's a bit of a meme at the moment. But yeah, it'd be hard to air guitar to that one. Maybe you can get like a 9-string gent guitar out and do something similar to like.
I wish I could play guitar. I really do.
But like you said, like I think drum and bass fans generally are quite open because just like metal, that in drum and bass there are just so many subgenres. And it's probably one of the most diverse forms of electronic music out there, and one of the oldest, most consistent styles of electronic music as well. Like house goes up and down, garage was at its peak, and then Craig David happened, which was the best and worst thing to happen to garage, and now that's disappeared. Dubstep obviously has completely mutated into this from what it was in these small basements in like South London to like being big kind of hyper electronic festivals in America. It's a totally different beast. And yeah, all these techno goes up and down, but drum and bass and jungle, it's been underground, and it has been the most consistent kind of style for the past 30 years now, since early 90s. It's been about since. So yeah, and there's jump up drum and bass, dance floor, which is the kind of style that I make. So people like Subfocus and Metric and Chase and Status, well, they're more jungle now, and like you get like Neurofunk and Liquid, and the spectrum of drum and bass is massive, and people dip in and out and to all the different styles and stuff like that. And imagine, obviously, metal is just as diverse. Obviously, you got your metalcore, you got your hair metal, you got your gent, which is filled with memes, and and like deathcore and everything. But yeah, obviously I can't really comment too much. I don't really know how open people are in metal to exploring the different subgenres, or if they're very like elitist or whatever too. But
I think it really depends, really, because I do see a mixture of things, certainly with people that jump onto the page. Like you'll probably know that if something's got clean vocals in it, then that's like the selling point for me. Like literally from listening to your album start to finish. There was odd occasions where a female vocal would like literally always in motion, and when the female vocals come in, and I was like, "Hello."
Yeah.
And I like that. I like hearing lots of different things within metal. I'm not one of these that's like, oh, if this gets put in, then it's an absolute no. Yeah. Like I'm not really hugely into there's some really, really brutal stuff which I can like, but I like something that I feel I can connect with. And even with an album like yours, which has got some absolutely crazy like samples and things like that, and there's probably much better words to use, but obviously I'm quite new into this particular sort of thing. But I do like that. I have to connect with something for me to really enjoy it. You can hear like a sound in a track and think, I really, really like that. But for me, there also has to be something that I don't know, it's something that makes you feel something. And I don't mean just not just something like, oh my God, that sounds like ridiculously heavy. Like by the things that went through my head when I was listening to the album in full. So first off, I was just like, wow, this is just amazing. I think in track 3, I think at one point I literally closed my eyes and I literally felt like I was on drugs, but in like a really good way.
Did you have a moment to detract the moment? Is that what it was?
Literally in the moment, my comment on it is just beautifully euphoric. Yeah. That's literally what I.
That was one that started off very differently as well, because that was when I wrote that was more my original kind of drum and bass style. But then when I started to do the more metal thing, I went back and I like the guitars aren't so obvious. It's more like cleans and stuff in the breakdowns in it. But there's guitar like good chords running throughout the whole thing and stuff like that. And then had like a little bit of like a Tesseract moment towards the end in the
Dude,
outro and stuff.
Dude, I literally like, where is it? There was a point on it. Where did I write it? I literally put at one point, like when I've just noticed, I'm noting down like little
It's like
influences.
Clairvoyant is a big nod to Tesseract as well. One of their tracks, Hexes, I think it was, with the intro. That's a big nod to them.
I did think of like the bands that were certainly coming to mind. Like I had that in track 12 as well, strangely. But I did think as well in track 1 there was certainly I don't know. I think certainly with the sort of tones that you're using did remind me a little bit of Sleep Token as well.
Okay, I've never really listened to them, but
It's quite interesting.
I'll definitely check them out. One act that you did put me onto recently that I've just had, they've already got to the top of my on repeat playlist, is Vola with that head mounted sideways track. It's just just unreal.
They're great.
Stream.
See, they're another one of those that I don't really go into them quite so often. They're another one of those that I see that gets requested a lot, but they're not generally like massively on my radar. Whereas like you get bands like Street Soldier, Gassed Up, as soon as they drop something, I'm like, right, I'm getting straight on it. But they're also one of those that, you know, anything that you listen to by them is going to be absolutely amazing. And I mean, it was as soon as you said, I remember you came into the stream and you were telling me about the next song that was getting ready to drop, and you were like, it's a little bit holy and a little bit rolly, like I mean, you'll probably remember I was just like, oh my god, like, that was it for me. I was like, you literally couldn't have picked a more perfect song, dude, because I've just started getting more and more into Spirit Box, and that was a track that
the first one I discovered was Rule of Nines, and that chorus in Rule of Nines is still my favorite one. But yeah, there's some really good ones. Looking forward to their the off recording there. Their albums, obviously, the recording of it's been delayed a few times throughout this year, obviously, with everything going on. But I believe they're off recording for the whole of February, and then so throughout the year we'll get their singles and then the album finally. So I'm really looking forward to that. And they're great guys, really supportive as well. So.
Well, yeah, big supporters of you, man. That's amazing. Amazing to have those guys supporting you. So what's like, obviously with the way that everything is with like the pandemic and we can't really do anything. I mean, it's if your like goals for the year involve going shopping, then you're sweet, mate. You're absolutely sweet, you know. But like,
you say that we've just probably same with you. We've just had like 2 days of like crazy snow, and it's finally gone now. So I am actually in desperate need of doing a food shop, because I've not been able to get out of the house because it snowed a couple of weeks ago as well, didn't it? Towards the start of January, and I went out in my car and I turned left and my car went right. So I was like, right, I'm not going out again in the snow. So yeah, that's desperate need. So I've literally been housebound for the past few days. So.
But I mean, the one thing that I've just like thinking from after listening to this, like I just thought, like, what normally, you know, you release an album, then for yourself, you'd get some shows booked so that you can, you know, that you can put it into the sets. Like, I mean, my main thought would be, because obviously we don't know when shows can start. I mean, I know shows are starting to appear, like, you know, from September onwards, but at the same time, it's still a massive if.
In New Zealand, their festival season is in full swing right now in New Zealand. And I've had a few people asking me, when are you coming over to New Zealand to play? And I'm like, what? Well, firstly, like with because I still work full time, when you go over, you need to quarantine for 2 days in a hotel room. And that just sounds like absolute hell for me, because I get bored very quickly. And you have to pay for that 2 weeks of a hotel room as well, and then you have to do the month tour on top of that. Like, there's no way I could get like 6 weeks off to do that. Like, work are supportive of me and do encourage me doing more stuff, but I don't think they'd want me on the other side of the planet for 6 weeks right now. I work as a teacher, so maybe during the summer holidays I can go over without having to quarantine for 2 weeks before I even do a single show. But obviously that's a long way off. But yeah, in terms of what I'm going to do, well, obviously jump on shows once they start happening again. Hopefully, like, the bookings will be a lot more people. I feel like there's just going to be such a bottleneck of venues and promoters and stuff like that trying to get people. And but on the plus side, I think shows will be more successful than ever, because everyone is just dying to go out and hear. I don't think anyone
cares.
But regardless of genre.
I don't think anyone
Yeah.
cares. It's just like, it's a show. Let's go to it. I mean, he's doing like a live stream for the literally doing it live, like as like an album stream. Not, I don't mean just like literally, right, I'm going to play you the CD. Just like you literally doing it as you would do it show. Is that, do you have the facility to be able to
Yeah,
do
so
that?
I've done the odd live stream throughout the year for various people and for myself on like Twitch and stuff like that. So obviously, as a DJ, that's quite, you just need some decks and to be able to do it at home and stuff like that. Obviously, for bands don't have that luxury. I'm not sure when you're putting this up, but on release day of the album, there is, I just announced, today's Wednesday, and I've just announced it. There is I've been actually working on it throughout most of January. There's a 2-hour long audio visual show, album release party. 8 p.m. is going to be on the torontoisbroken Facebook, the Yana Music Facebook page, which is the record label that I run, and then YouTube and Twitch channels for torontoisbroken. So if this goes up before then you try and lock in for that 8 p.m. UK time. Got loads of cool visuals and stuff like that, showcasing the whole album, plus like loads of other stuff as well. It's a 2-hour long mix show. If not, it'll be up on YouTube and SoundCloud to watch and listen back to later. So not long afterwards. So that's kind of like the release party show that we're doing. Want to try and get as many people involved in that, on watching that as possible and stuff. And yeah, there'll be, me and my manager, we've organized a few more kind of like remote shows and stuff like that we'll be recording. We've got a venue booked out for March that we'll be doing a load of recording in for shows as well. Might be there's some other like live streaming opportunities that come up as well. So we'll just have to wait and see. Really, with that, because we're kind of, hands are a bit tied at the minute, aren't we? So
absolutely. I mean, at least you still got this. This is like highly exciting. To release a full. It's not just like a one single track. It's a full album. You've clearly been keeping yourself really busy. I mean, another question was going to be, how have you coped with the whole lockdown? But I'm guessing this has been like a massive focus.
Yeah, well, thankfully, I was able to, with the lockdown, even though I was working, I'm at home the whole time. So I was able, if I whilst I was teaching, if I had like a spare 10 minutes or so between lessons, I could just quickly, I had Ableton, which is what I'm producing in the background on my computer, and I could just quickly jump on, do a bit of changes, and then, all right, kids, what have we done? And stuff. So yeah, I was able to write it. And also on top of that, this album, it wasn't a challenge to write. So obviously I think the last album was quite challenging because there was a lot of back and forth and stuff like that. And with the label that I was on, and yeah, like it just came together. So I think also I was just so excited about this new direction. Like the whole album kind of is about self-discovery, because it kind of follows two themes. Firstly, there's the self-discovery and reinvention of me as torontoisbroken with this whole metal sound, bring that in. But also as well, I in like around November, October time in 2019, my house got flooded and pretty much completely destroyed. And so there's a big insurance job. And so, and at the same time, a couple of weeks later, my first kind of like long-term relationship, adult kind of grown-up relationship, we were together for about 4 years, broke down. It wasn't like a bad breakup, but it was just one of those, it just ran its course and stuff like that. And the hardest part of that was kind of like, I'm sure anybody that's been in a long-term relationship knows, like I was so used to being part of a duo, and I kind of like, for lack of it sounds corny, I kind of had to work out who I was again.
No, it's completely true. Absolutely true. That does happen.
And obviously, and then with the lockdown on top of that, like just things just up and down, how you feel emotionally. There is a track about that. So there's Letters Goodbye at the end, which has got Christina Rotondo on, who I know you're a fan of.
No, I know. I recognize the vocal because I was listening to that. So I thought it's great as well, because I know that's quite a kind of, well, to me, it seems like that's quite a sort of typical way to end something like this, because
Yeah.
it starts, it's absolutely crazy, then you've got the middle section where the metal comes in, and then it gradually starts to, when it goes into something like that, I think it also gives you the opportunity, because it's a lot softer to listen to, it gives you the
Yeah.
opportunity to sort of think of everything you've literally just experienced.
Yeah, like the story behind that track is she when me and my ex parted ways, we agreed we would meet up again 2 weeks later, and we would write each other letters just about the whole experience, just like things like just talking about everything, well, our thoughts and feelings, got down to paper, and we met up again and we read them to one another and took each other's letters away back with us.
Mm.
And I sent so it's a collaboration. It was co-produced by Active, who's an artist on my label, a guy called Shane, and he's a really good friend of mine as well. We've worked together loads in the past, and he's released a lot of stuff on my label as well. And his younger sister is Katie from an act called Coven. Coven, Koven. Any drum bass listeners will be like, "What? That's crazy!" But for you, people from metal that don't have that don't know, definitely worth checking out. They're like a duo, producer vocalist duo. They're huge, and I basically sent her a copy of the letter my ex wrote to me, and she basically turned that into a song.
Wow.
And she then wrote the vocal, and like a demo, and then I contacted Christina because later I was just looking for vocalists in general. I was using Fiverr. She popped up, and I was obviously quite familiar with her for years from all the covers she does on YouTube, and she's got quite a
Yeah.
big, nearly like 80,000 followers on YouTube and stuff. So I was like, right, I'm definitely having her, and like we actually got loads in, like we know all the same people. She used to work in the same town that I live in as well, and crazy. So it's crazy how connected people are. Like you were saying, you were just chatting recently to like somebody that I went to school with as well.
Yeah.
Before we're chatting here. So it's all a bit mad how small the world really is. And yeah, she smashed it. She did a brilliant job on that. And she's super excited about it because it's the first time I've heard doing a kind of feature like this as well.
Mhm.
And yeah, that's basically the story behind Letters Goodbye. And it felt natural to kind of to close it that way. And also, this third album is part of a trilogy of albums going back to my first album, and there's kind of themes that carry on throughout the whole albums and little musical motifs that appear in several tracks across all three albums.
Mhm.
And also each album starts how the previous one finished. So if you listen
Excellent.
back to the end of You Are Not Alone, which is my second album, it closes with the same kind of like drone sound that opens this album as well. So you could actually listen to all three albums back to back in one sitting if you got 3 hours spare, and what literally go from start to finish, just like all the tracks blend together. And it just felt natural to close off this trilogy that I ended with that track as well. And it's probably the most kind of personal track I've written as well. So it's because I've never really been overly personal with my kind of music anyway. So
I like how you did that, because you wouldn't necessarily think that, in this sort of thing that would come into there, and especially as after I just said before, for me, I like something that enables me to connect with it, and that's exactly right with that. I can imagine now when I listen back to that, I'm probably gonna look at it listen to it in a completely different
yeah,
mindset. Whereas, but I mean, I literally just said, I literally just commented on it. It was a beautiful way to like finish it off.
yeah,
But now actually knowing what the meaning is behind that, and that's absolutely amazing. And as you said, the story of how the lyrics came together from that, for obviously two separate personal experiences. One for you from your previous relationship, and obviously one from your ex-partner as well. I think that's a really, really nice thing. A lot of people don't generally do that sort of thing, and I
yeah.
really, really like
Obviously,
that.
I checked with her first to see if it was okay. Like we didn't part on bad terms or anything. We still like speak occasionally, but like
Hmm.
it wasn't like a breakup where one of us did something wrong, for example.
Yeah.
It was just one of those. It just ran its course and stuff like that. And yeah, she's still supportive of what I do and stuff like that. And so yeah, so I wouldn't have done it if she wasn't happy with it, unless I was a
No,
dick. So,
that's really
but
nice,
like
man.
that recently also got picked up on and premiered on Radio 1 by Rene Levice on
Wow.
Monday night. so you can listen to that along with the free fall as well. It's quite interesting with the free fall because the free fall features the heaviest moment on the whole album as well, with that breakdown in the middle, like the guitar drops down to something crazy like double drop D tuning or something like that. Like,
dude,
it's already pretty low as it is, but I went lower like for one part.
my only comment on that is I literally wrote, "The boy knows how to do drops perfectly." I'll have to send you all the little comments and things that I wrote going through it. I didn't want to use it as like right, here's a full review. I just wanted to make some notes on it so that it'd be interesting to see what you would say about, certain songs and what my thoughts were and what kind of vibe it had. And then, you said things that sort of tied into what I've noticed. And given that I'm not massively familiar in this area, that's quite interesting. But I'm really looking forward to seeing what happens with this now once it gets released. I'll be intrigued to see what fans are jumping on it. I mean, I know people as soon as I feature Paragons, but people are like, I can't stop listening to it. I mean, literally as soon as I'd first heard Paragons, man, I think I was probably listening to it about 10 times a day for like a week. It was brilliant. I absolutely love it. And then when you did the live of it, the live playthrough of it, even better,
Yeah. I think maybe on later down the line, especially with this, it could be a possibility to do some kind of live band format with this alongside, because that'll also, like I was talking about earlier, like working out how to structure the tracks. I was quite restricted to drum and bass because it's designed to be DJed. But if I have that live band output as well, I can even push it even further, because if I wrote something with like a weird structure, I'd be like, well, I'm not actually going to play this out live. So what's the point? Because it'd be a nightmare to mix. But if I've got that output, that second output of being able to maybe do a live band of sorts, then obviously I am able to explore that venue with that, and people can showcase it that way. And totally different world. I wanted. I find sometimes people in drum and bass are quite scared of venturing outside of drum and bass into a different audience. Whilst with this, that was kind of my intention. Obviously, I am still a drum and bass producer through and through, but like I've always said from the start, I just want to make the music that I would want to listen to myself. And I wrote this to appeal just as equally to like the metal audience as well as the drum and bass audience. Because if it was just a drum and bass album, it'd be fine. I wouldn't have any problem with putting it out. But like the biggest challenge of this is trying to, like I said, enter that new ecosystem that I'm totally unfamiliar with. Like, for example, reaction videos that you do. It's something that is completely alien to me in like drum and bass, for example. So like I discovered you quite a couple of years ago. I stumbled, like what I quite like is like hip hop guys reacting to metal and stuff. Have you ever seen those? Like there's this one guy, I think he's called like Lay Black, and his reaction video to Duality by Slipknot, you have to check that out. It is ridiculous. Like he's having such a good time, and you can see it, like he's crazy. And I think I'd stumbled across you because I was like, has anybody ever done these reaction channels to like drum and bass tracks or anything? And I think I stumbled across, it was one of your very first videos. You're like laying there on the sofa reacting to Hype by Chase and Status, if you remember that one.
Yes, I do. Yeah,
in like your living room. I don't know how, that's probably quite an old one now.
Oh, dude, the quality was shocking then. Really was.
I don't even think. I think the audio from it is just coming from the TV into the like. But yeah, that's how I came across your stuff, and like I just enjoyed like just the faces you pull when you're listening to this stuff. Like,
yeah, great. I do pull some interesting faces.
Yeah, and just like it's just great seeing people's reactions. Like, and obviously it's all that old thing of like you want to show when you show something new to a friend, you like looking over just to see what their reaction is and stuff like that. And obviously when you're playing live as well, we've not played in front of a crowd properly since like last February, almost a year, and seeing that reaction, people pulling those bass faces on the front row and sticking their gun fingers up. And the biggest compliment in drum and bass is when you drop a track and someone screams, "Oi, fuck off." That's like the best compliment you can get. And then that's when you know you need to pull the tune back and rewind and off you go again. And yeah, just missing stuff like that, and just like the vibe and energy, and like drum and bass, and I think like the same with metal as well. Like it's like when you hear it in a club or in a live venue, it's like it's a physical force that you feel. It's the energy from like the sub and the drums, and the same probably with metal as well. Like, and yeah, that's why I love it so much, and I think why it just works so well with the metal element as well.
I do. One thing I've enjoyed. I mean, it's probably only about what, maybe I think it was in the summertime when my friend had started sending me. He has like, we always used to go down to the skate park, and I had my speaker with me. I know I used to, just have a ton of metal on it, but that's not everything that everyone at the skate park wants to hear.
No.
So he put a playlist together, and it had some really nice filthy stuff in there. I couldn't tell you what's on it now. I can't remember, but that was sort of like when I started to get into it a bit. And I'd noticed if I was doing any work at home, whether it's editing or just, writing up all the stuff for YouTube, I'd put one of his drum and bass things on. And like, when I was already feeling a little bit tired, I put it on and I was like, this is literally like the musical version of having like 100 cups of coffee. It's great. I love
get
how it
mellow
does
drum and
that.
bass and stuff, but yeah.
But no, man,
But I get what you mean, yeah.
I'm really enjoying like this type of thing. I really am enjoying it, and it's another area I've gone into, and it's something that's also, I mean, especially the fact that it's only just about to be released, so it's something really really new, and I'm looking forward to seeing what else comes from it. It'd be interesting to see if anyone that if for some reason my video that I've done of you guys or this interview, if somebody else might pop up and say, oh, well, I've done this. If I'll absolutely be down to that. So if anyone's watching this, that's with it, it doesn't even matter. Even if it's just drum and bass, it doesn't have any metal elements, send it through. Someone asked in a live stream the other night, oh, do you only do metal? I was like, no, man. I was like, he's like, oh, I've got a drum and bass thing. I literally didn't have time to do it. So if anyone is watching and they're debating on whether to send me something because it's not metal, absolutely send it to me. I'd be down to do it, So I guess I'd like to
tell you
thank
what,
you really for
in the
that.
next live stream, I'll pop through and I'll educate you on this foghorn bass that I mentioned earlier.
Do, man.
So,
I'd really be interested in that. What we'll do is, for anyone watching, I'll make sure that all your social links are posted down below so they can go and check it out. We'll put all your links to buy any of the previous two.
Yeah, there's also so the album's out on the 29th of February on all the usual places like Spotify, Beatport, iTunes, both for streaming and sale. And there is also a limited number of physical CDs like Kev's got and what I've got that you can get exclusively from my Bandcamp page. So just search Toronto's Broken Bandcamp. To be fair, Toronto's Broken is a good name for search engine, so it comes up really easily with everything. So there are some drum and bass producers that have not so great searchable names like Break or Audio, but like they are legends in the scene. But try and find them on Google, you're gonna have a good time.
You need to have something which is highly searchable. There's nothing worse than trying to find someone will tell me something on SoundCloud, so I'll just like search and be like, oh, what's your SoundCloud? Then it'd be like, oh, Dan R, and I'm like, well, that's going to be fucking easy to find, isn't it? But I'd certainly encourage anyone to buy this. I really would. I mean, as soon as it arrived, man, and it's weird because it's one of the I wouldn't look at the cover and think drum and bass. If anything, I'd look at the cover and think core album, and the quality that you've done of it is absolutely
like the thing with my label because I've been running my own label, Yana Music, since about 2019 after I left Viper Recordings, which is kind of one of the main drum and bass labels after I released my second album with them. And it is literally just me. So down to the artwork and stuff like that is me, and all the the animations we use for our promotional videos and stuff. And we've got a good little family. Beginning, it was just a chance for me output to just control my own stuff and put it out as and when I wanted to. And then we've got over the past coming up to 2 years now, I suppose, in May, we've got a good little family of artists that are a good little community. We've got of guys all making some great stuff. Our release schedule for this year has already kind of filled up the first half of it, to be honest. And I've got a few more of my own any stuff that I release in the future I need to somehow slot in there as well. But we've got loads on that front as well. We have got a remix of Paragons coming up in a couple of months' time from a bit of from a drum and bass icon in the scene that I was so lucky to get. I don't know if you're familiar with him. There's a guy called Zardonic.
Don't think so. I can
Huge
guarantee you, my friend Neil will have heard of it. Guarantee it.
Zardonic. He's been kind of championing this like metal and drum and bass thing for years,
Right.
and like he just loves the album so much. And yeah, he was such a great guy to work with. And he actually WhatsApped me today saying, I've started work on your Paragons remix. It's going to be sick, and you'll get it by the 31st. And then obviously then I need to schedule it for release and stuff. So probably in this quarter of 2021, that'll be out. So super excited for that. And yeah, I've started work on some more new stuff. I want to see kind of where I can push this metal element forward. Well, in terms of what format, I'm not going to write an album anytime soon. But what I did love actually was, I think my favorite release of last year was the Bring Me the Horizon mini album.
Is that the one they've just released? Was that?
Yeah, with Kingslayer on and Parasite.
Mate, honestly, wow.
Kingslayer is and even that Cure for the Itch or Itch for the Cure, that like shout out to that Linkin Park interlude, and then with the jungle element in there as well. Like, I really loved what they did with that. Just releasing individual singles and then bam, here's all the singles together plus some more in a mini album. I quite like that format. Something I'd like to maybe try out. But that was so good, especially Kingslayer. I might have done a little remix of Kingslayer that will be on that you'll hear on the album launch show on Friday evening on the 29th, or you can listen back to it later. So you'll have to wait and see for that one. So,
dude, I swear you must just like look at songs on my Spotify that I play the most and just be like, right, what shall we do for him that he's gonna love, you know? But yeah, man, that album, I loved that album. And the previous one they did to that, wasn't a fan at all. And my friends was like, dude,
it was all right. When I was younger, I listened to obviously Suicide. Is it Suicide Season?
Yes, believe so.
The second one a lot with the girl with her intestines falling out.
Yeah,
on the cover. It was that one. I kind of missed the one after that, but then Sempiternal with Shadow Moses on and those tracks. Even the album after that, the one with, is it That's the Spirit? Yeah, That's the Spirit. Yes. To be fair, Ammo was that Wonderful Life track was a wicked one. I was a big fan of that. I quite liked them. Like, they weren't afraid to go out. I didn't listen to that weird ambient album they released.
I can't remember which one that was. I mean, for me, it's literally been what was it? Like Sempiternal was what I never really listened to them much before. It was Sempiternal. Then I loved That's the Spirit. Wasn't a fan of Ammo. Then they released a new one, and that just, I've seen quite a lot of people that went off.
Some of the heaviest stuff on that. Like,
yeah,
moments in Kingslayer and Dear Diary, and
he screamed again.
They even got Mick Gordon to co-produce it as well. He did the Doom soundtrack. So,
love a bit of Mick Gordon. Bring the gent.
Yeah. So that's where I'm at the minute. I'm not really sure exactly what the plan will look like. If anything, I've just released an album, so give me a break.
yeah, man. You need to sleep. But no, I want to thank you for joining us today, man. It's been a really interesting chat, and I look forward to seeing where this album takes you.
Thank you.
But thanks very much for your time, man, and I look forward to seeing all the comments down below. So everyone, go and look at all these shit and just lose your mind. You got to do it. But thanks a lot, Christian.
Yeah, cheers. Thank you.
See you, man. Bye-bye.